You grew up believing that Tyrannosaurus Rex was the apex predator of the dinosaur age. Hollywood sold you this idea. Museums around the world have recognized this creature as the absolute king of prehistoric carnivores. But what if I told you that, while the T-Rex dominated North America, on the other side of the continent in South America, there was something bigger, algo mais lethal, something so brutal that it hunted the largest animals to ever walk the earth. Today, you will meet Giganotosaurus carolini, and when we reach the end of this video, you will never look at T-Rex the same way again. Argentina, Patagonia, 1993. Amateur paleontologist Rubén Carolini was exploring rock formations in the province of Neuquén when he stumbled upon something that would completely change our understanding of Cretaceous super predators. Initially, he thought he had found just a few more fossilized dinosaur bones, something relatively common in that region, but when experts arrived at the site and began excavating, what emerged from the rock was something absolutely stunning, a skull 6 feet and 3 inches long. To put that into perspective, the T-Rex's skull was about 5 feet long. We are already talking about something 20% bigger just in the head. And here begins the first big revelation about this animal. The name Giganotosaurus literally means giant lizard of the south, and Carolini is a tribute to the discoverer. But contrary to what many people think, giant does not necessarily mean heavier. And this distinction is absolutely crucial to understanding how this animal hunted, how it moved, and why it was so lethal. Giganotosaurus measured somewhere between 12 and 13 meters long from head to tail. Some specimens may have reached up to 14 meters. The T-Rex was between 11 and 12 meters. So yes, Giganotosaurus was longer. But here comes the fascinating detail. It weighed between 6 and 8 tons, while the T-Rex easily reached 9 tons. Wait one moment. How can a larger animal weigh less? The answer lies in the body engineering of these creatures, and this is where evolutionary biology gets absolutely fascinating. Giganotosaurus was built for relative speed and agility. It had a more elongated, slender body, proportionally longer legs, and a slightly less robust bone structure than that of the T-Rex. While the Tyrannosaurus was a battle tank with jaws that could crush bones, the Giganotosaurus was a living blade, designed for deep cuts and massive bleeding. They are two completely different philosophies of predation, shaped by completely different environments and prey. And speaking of environment, let's delve into the world of late Cretaceous South America, around 95 million years ago. The Patagonia of that time had absolutely nothing to do with the cold and windy plains we know today. Imagine a humid, subtropical landscape with average temperatures between 25 and 30 degrees Celsius. Dense coniferous forests alternated with open plains, dotted with giant ferns and cycads. Swollen rivers cut through the land, creating floodplains rich with life. And it is in this lush setting that Giganotosaurus reigned as the absolute top predator. But he didn't hunt small prey alone. No, this animal had a very specific target. And when I say very specific, I'm talking about the largest land animal that ever existed, Argentinosaurus huinculensis. This titanosaur measured an absurd 30 to 35 meters in length and weighed somewhere between 80 and 100 tons. It was literally a walking mountain of flesh. And here's the question that defies all logic. How on earth does an 8-ton predator take down and kill prey that's 10 to 12 times heavier? The answer, my friends, lies in the specialized anatomy of Giganotosaurus and a hunting strategy that we have only recently begun to understand. Let's start with the skull, because that's where this animal's main weapon lives. That 6-foot skull was extraordinarily long and narrow compared to that of the T-Rex. The snout was more pointed, almost elegant if we can use that word for a carnivorous dinosaur. But the elegance was deceptive. Inside that mouth were approximately 76 serrated teeth arranged in rows. And here's the crucial detail. Those teeth weren't made for crushing, they were made to cut. Each Giganotosaurus tooth was between 6 and 8 inches long, with serrated edges like a steak knife, only on a monstrous scale. The shape was flattened on the side, creating a sharp blade on both edges. When this animal bit, it didn't try to crush or break bones like the T-Rex did. Instead, he would apply the bite and then pull the head back forcefully, using the powerful muscles in his neck. The result? Deep, massive cuts that tore muscles, ruptured blood vessels, and caused catastrophic hemorrhages. The force of the bite was estimated at around 3 tons of pressure. For comparison, the T-Rex had a bite size of 6 to 8 tons. So the T-Rex bit harder. sim, mordia. But brute force isn't everything. Giganotosaurus compensated for its less powerful bite with infinitely more efficient cutting mechanics. Think of it this way. You can use a hammer to break up a piece of meat, or you can use a sharp knife to slice it. The hammer uses more force, but the knife is more efficient. The Giganotosaurus was the knife, but the bite was not his main weapon, as we will see in a moment when we talk about the group hunting strategy. Before that, we need to understand the rest of this predator's body. Giganotosaurus's legs were long and muscular, with robust femurs that supported all that weight. Biomechanical studies suggest that he could reach speeds of up to 32 kilometers per hour in short bursts. It wasn't fast by modern predator standards, but it was fast enough for an 8-ton animal. And most importantly, it was probably faster than the adult Argentinosaurus. Giganotosaurus's arms were small, yes, but not as ridiculously reduced as T-Rex's. Each arm had 3 fingers with sharp, curved claws. These claws measured around 20 centimeters and were completely functional. Muscular analyses suggest that the arms had considerable strength to hold and stabilize prey during the bite. Picture this. As the animal's head rips a massive chunk of flesh from the side of a titanosaur, the arms are firmly embedded in the victim's skin, providing anchorage and leverage for an even more devastating pull. The tail was long and muscular, functioning as an essential counterweight. When Giganotosaurus charged at prey, the tail extended backwards, maintaining the animal's balance and allowing it to make sharp turns if necessary. Every part of this creature was optimized for a very specific type of hunting: ambush attacks, followed by short chases and strategic bites designed to cause massive bleeding. And now we come to the theory that really changes everything: pack hunting. For decades, paleontologists have debated whether large theropods like Giganotosaurus were solitary or social hunters. Evidence began to accumulate when discoveries of multiple individuals were made in close proximity. But the most convincing case comes from Mapusaurus rosei, an extremely close relative of Giganotosaurus that lived in the same region a few million years later. A fossil site in Argentina has revealed the remains of at least 9 Mapusaurus of different ages. Altogether, isso não foi acidente. These animals died together, possibly hunting together. If Mapusaurus hunted in groups, it is extremely likely that Giganotosaurus did as well. And this completely changes the dynamics of how these animals took down gigantic prey, like Argentinosaurus. Let's mentally reconstruct a hunting scenario. A group of 3 to 5 Giganotosaurus identifies a subadult Argentinosaurus, still large at around 50 tons but not at its maximum size. They don't attack head-on. That would be suicide. A titanosaur tail could generate enough force to break bones with a single blow. Instead, they wait. Paciencia é crucial. They follow Argentinosaurus for hours, perhaps days, waiting for the right moment. When the titanosaur approaches a river to drink, the ambush begins. The terrain near the water is slightly steep, making quick movements difficult for a 50-ton animal. One of the Giganotosaurus attacks first, coming from the rear side. The bite is precise, targeting the area just above the hind leg where large muscles are exposed. The teeth penetrate deeply, and then the predator pulls with brutal force. A 50-kilogram piece of flesh is torn off. Blood gushes. Argentinosaurus spins, trying to use its tail as a whip, but it is too slow. Another Giganotosaurus is already on the other side, applying the same tactic. Yet another massive chunk of flesh is removed. The titanosaur is bleeding from 2 massive wounds now. He tries to escape, but the blood loss begins to affect his motor skills. A third Giganotosaurus charges, this time aiming for the neck. The bite is not immediately fatal, but it ruptures important arteries. More blood. And now comes the most brutal part of this strategy. The Giganotosaurus don't keep attacking frantically. They retreat. They simply wait. Argentinosaurus is mortally wounded, losing liters and liters of blood every minute. He walks perhaps a few hundred more meters before his legs give out. The colossus falls, causing the earth to shake, and only then do the Giganotosaurus approach for their meal. There was no prolonged struggle. There was no unnecessary risk. It was surgical, it was efficient, it was absolutely terrifying. This cut-and-wait strategy is similar to what some modern large predators do. Komodo dragons, for example, bite their prey and then follow it for days until infection and blood loss do their work. But Giganotosaurus was infinitely more efficient. Their teeth caused much more severe immediate trauma, and group hunting drastically accelerated the process. And here's something I want you to take a minute to reflect on. If you find this fascinating, if you are impressed by the brutal ingenuity of nature 95 million years ago, leave a like on the video, because this type of in-depth content, which really dives into science and isn't just on the surface, involves a lot of research and scripting. That like helps the channel grow a lot and motivates me to bring more videos like this about the prehistoric fauna of South America, which is absolutely sensational, but almost no one talks about it. Now, let's move on to a comparison that everyone wants to see: Giganotosaurus versus Tyrannosaurus Rex. In a hypothetical one-on-one arena, who would win? Let's analyze this scientifically, without letting movie hype influence our judgment. The T-Rex lived in the late Cretaceous, about 66 to 68 million years ago in North America. Giganotosaurus lived about 95 million years ago in South America. They never met. They lived on different continents, at different times. But let's play with this idea. In terms of size, we've already established Giganotosaurus longer, T-Rex heavier. Bite: T-Rex wins with those 6 to 8 tons of pressure against the Giganotosaurus's 3 tons. But type of bite: Giganotosaurus had much more efficient cutting teeth for causing bleeding. Speed: probably a draw or advantage for Giganotosaurus due to its lighter body and proportionally longer legs. Intelligence: brain endocast studies suggest that the T-Rex had a slightly larger brain in proportion to its body, with better development of sensory areas, especially vision and smell. Here's my analysis. In direct, head-to-head combat, the T-Rex would likely have the advantage. That crushing bite could cause immediate catastrophic damage, potentially shattering the Giganotosaurus's backbone or skull with a single well-placed bite. The T-Rex's more robust body would also offer better resistance to slashing attacks. But if Giganotosaurus could avoid direct contact, circle the opponent, and apply its strategic cutting technique, causing bleeding in several areas, it would have a real chance. And here I want to know your opinion. In a battle between these two titans, considering everything we said about anatomy, strategy, and adaptations, who would you bet your money on? Go to the comments and leave your answer, but it's not worth just saying T-Rex or Giganotosaurus. Explain why. What would be the winning strategy? I read all the comments and love seeing these scientific discussions going on. But going back to Giganotosaurus specifically, there is another aspect of this animal that we need to explore: the thermal issue. An 8-ton animal generates an absurd amount of metabolic heat. In Cretaceous subtropical Patagonia, with temperatures often above 25 degrees, thermoregulation was a serious challenge. How did Giganotosaurus deal with this? Analysis of bone structure reveals evidence of elaborate vascular systems, especially in the skull. That elongated snout wasn't just to accommodate more teeth. It worked like a biological radiator. Passages for blood vessels ran inside the nasal and jaw bones. When the animal breathed, the air passing through these structures helped cool the blood that flowed there. This cooler blood then circulated back to the body, reducing internal temperature. It's the same principle that modern elephants use with their giant ears. Furthermore, Giganotosaurus's skin likely had some level of superficial vascularization that allowed heat dissipation under conditions of intense activity. This brings us to an interesting question about hunting behavior. Modern big cats, like lions, hunt mainly during the cooler hours of the day, precisely to avoid overheating during the chase. It is likely that Giganotosaurus followed a similar pattern. Hunts would take place at dawn or dusk, when temperatures were milder. During scorching midday weather, these predators likely rested in shaded areas, conserving energy and avoiding heat stress. Speaking of behavior, let's address something that fascinates anyone. What was the social life of these animals like outside of hunting? If we accept that Giganotosaurus hunted in groups, this implies a minimally complex social structure. They needed to coordinate attacks, which requires communication. But how did theropod dinosaurs communicate? We don't know for sure, but we can make inferences based on anatomy and modern analogues. Giganotosaurus had a laryngeal structure that likely allowed vocalizations. We're not talking about Hollywood movie-style roars, that's a myth. The larynx of dinosaurs was not structurally capable of producing roars like those of large mammals. But low-frequency vocalizations? Absolutely possible. Think low, deep sounds, similar to what modern crocodiles make. These low-frequency sounds travel long distances and could be used for coordination during hunts or to establish territory. Additionally, body language certainly played a role. Tail posture, head position, specific movements could communicate intentions. A dominant Giganotosaurus in the group probably had ways of demonstrating its hierarchical superiority without necessarily needing constant physical confrontations. After all, fights between 8-ton predators equipped with knife-like teeth would be extremely dangerous even for the victor. Evolution favors behaviors that minimize unnecessary risks. And that brings us to another issue: hierarchy. In modern hunting groups like wolves or lions, there is a clear hierarchical structure that determines who eats first after the hunt. It's reasonable to assume that Giganotosaurus had something similar. The dominant individual, probably the largest and most experienced in the group, would have priority over the most nutritious parts of the carcass. Younger or subordinate individuals would wait their turn or feed on less desirable parts. But unlike social mammals that can have complex family bonds, the social structure of Giganotosaurus was probably more pragmatic. These animals associated together because cooperative hunting dramatically increased the success rate against gigantic prey. When prey was abundant, larger groups could exist. When food became scarce, individuals might temporarily separate or smaller groups would form. It was evolutionary flexibility in action. Let's now talk about the life cycle of this predator, because understanding how a Giganotosaurus was born, grew and matured gives us incredible insights into its biology. Unfortunately, we never found fossilized eggs confirmed to be from Giganotosaurus, but based on other large theropods, we can make reasonable extrapolations. The eggs were probably elongated, about 40 to 50 centimeters long, with relatively thick shells for protection. The female would lay between 20 and 40 eggs in a nest dug into the ground or built from vegetation. Here's something fascinating. Evidence from other theropods suggests that at least one parent stood nearby, guarding the nest. Imagine an 8-ton Giganotosaurus sitting patiently on or near its nest for weeks, warding off any threats. When the chicks hatched, they were perhaps 2 feet long and weighed just a few pounds. Vulnerable, tiny compared to adults, but they grew quickly. Analysis of growth lines in fossilized bones of related theropods shows that these animals had explosive growth rates during adolescence. A young Giganotosaurus could gain hundreds of pounds per year during its years of rapid growth. At 10 years of age, an individual could already weigh 4 to 5 tons. At 15 years old, close to maximum adult weight. At 20 years old, completely mature and at the peak of his hunting ability. But growing up was dangerous. Chicks and juveniles were easy targets for other predators. The infant mortality rate was probably very high. Perhaps 80 to 90% of puppies did not reach adulthood. Those who survived had to learn complex hunting skills. Young Giganotosaurus probably followed adults, observing techniques, learning to coordinate attacks, understanding which prey was viable and which was too dangerous. And when they finally became adults, their life expectancy was probably between 25 and 30 years. Not unlike large modern predators, but those 25 to 30 years were intense. Every day was a fight for survival, whether finding the next meal, defending territory, or competing for mates during breeding season. In fact, reproduction. This is a topic we rarely cover because fossil evidence is scarce, but let's speculate scientifically. During mating season, Giganotosaurus males likely competed for females. This competition could involve displays of strength, vocalizations, and occasionally limited physical combat. Full fights would be rare because the risk of serious injury was too high, but aggressive stances and perhaps a few intimidating bites would establish hierarchy. The winning male would then have access to the female. The reproductive act in dinosaurs is one of the greatest mysteries in paleontology because soft tissues do not fossilize. But based on pelvic anatomy and modern analogues like crocodiles and birds, we know that dinosaurs had cloacas, multifunctional openings for excretion and reproduction. The process was probably quick and straightforward, with the male briefly mounting the female. Weeks later, the female would be looking for a suitable place to lay eggs, and the cycle would begin again. This reproductive machinery functioned with evolutionary perfection for millions of years, allowing Giganotosaurus to dominate its ecosystem as the undisputed top predator throughout its existence in the fossil record. But every species, no matter how successful, eventually faces its end. Giganotosaurus disappeared from the fossil record about 93 million years ago. It was not a victim of the mass extinction event that would kill non-avian dinosaurs 27 million years later. So what happened? The The most likely answer is gradual environmental change combined with competitive pressures. Cretaceous Patagonia was in constant transformation. Sea levels fluctuated, climates changed, forests gave way to plains, and vice versa. These changes directly affected the distribution of giant herbivores like Argentinosaurus. If prey populations declined in certain regions, the predators specialized in hunting them also declined. Furthermore, other theropods were evolving, competing for the same ecological niche. Mapusaurus itself, which I mentioned earlier, may have eventually replaced Giganotosaurus as the dominant predator. Local extinction followed by replacement by competing species is a common pattern in evolutionary history. It's not dramatic like an asteroid or massive volcanism. It's gradual, almost silent. Populations slowly decline, ranges shrink, until the last reproductive generation fails to produce viable offspring and the species disappears. Thus ended the era of the Giganotosaurus, not with a bang, but with an ecological whisper. However, its fossilized legacy allows us to reconstruct its existence and appreciate how extraordinarily adapted this animal was. And that brings me to an important point. Producing this type of deep scientific content is not easy. He goes through days of researching academic papers, consulting experts, checking data. If you are enjoying this journey through South American paleontology and want to support this work, consider contributing any amount via the Thanks a Lot button below or by becoming a member of the channel. Each contribution, no matter how small, helps maintain the quality of these videos and allows me to dedicate more time to bringing Brazilian and South American science to you. And look, we have so much incredible material here in our region that the rest of the world ignores. We need to change this. But returning to Giganotosaurus, there is one last aspect I want to explore: its impact on our understanding of predator diversity in the Cretaceous. For decades, paleontology was dominated by North American and European discoveries. The T-Rex became the universal symbol of carnivorous dinosaurs precisely because it was found in the United States, studied extensively by American institutions, and massively promoted by American popular culture. I'm not criticizing, it's just a historical fact. But the discovery of Giganotosaurus in 1993 was a watershed moment. Suddenly, it became clear that South American ecosystems had developed completely independent lineages of super predators adapted to unique prey and environments. This opened the floodgates for a new era of paleontological exploration in South America. Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, all of these countries began to receive more attention and funding for expeditions. And what have we found since then? An absurd wealth of prehistoric fauna. Titanosaurs even larger than Argentinosaurus. Other carcharodontosaurs related to Giganotosaurus. Land crocodilians that competed with dinosaurs. Unique primitive birds. An entire complex interconnected biosphere that rivaled in diversity anything found in North America or Asia. Giganotosaurus specifically taught us that size, brute strength, and a powerful bite are not the only ways to be a successful predator. Strategy, teamwork, specialized weapons for specific functions all have their place in evolutionary history. Nature constantly experiments with different solutions to the same problem. How does a large carnivore catch and kill huge prey? The T-Rex's response was overwhelming strength. Giganotosaurus's response was cutting precision and group coordination. Both worked perfectly in their respective contexts. Today, when we look at a Giganotosaurus skeleton in a museum, we are only seeing the bones. But with modern science, we can infer muscles, tendons, behaviors, ecological strategies. We can almost see the animal alive in our minds, moving through the Cretaceous forests, coordinating with members of its group, delivering that surgical bite to an unsuspecting titanosaur. It's a window into a world lost 95 million years ago. And the window is getting clearer as our technology and methodology improves. Techniques such as computed tomography of fossils, isotope analysis to determine diet, computerized biomechanical simulations, all of these are revolutionizing paleontology. 10-20 years from now, we will know even more about Giganotosaurus. Perhaps we will find fossilized soft tissue preserved in exceptional conditions. Maybe we'll find eggs with embryos. Perhaps we will find preserved footprints showing group hunting behavior. Each new discovery adds more details to the picture. And that's what makes paleontology so exciting. It is not a dead science studying dead creatures. It is a dynamic science, constantly reviewing and updating our understanding based on new evidence. The Giganotosaurus we know today is much more complete and accurate than the Giganotosaurus known in 1995, just 2 years after its discovery. And the 2035 Giganotosaurus will be even more detailed than the 2026 one. So what do we take away from this journey through the world of Giganotosaurus carolini? First, South America had its own super predators that rivaled or even surpassed the famous North American dinosaurs in several aspects. Second, evolution does not have a single solution for every problem. It experiments creatively with different approaches. Third, that teamwork and strategy can be as important as raw size and strength. And fourth, there is still much more to discover about prehistoric life on our own continent. If you've made it this far, seriously, thank you very much for your attention. This is the type of content I love to produce, diving deep into science, paleontology, evolutionary biology, without oversimplifying but also without being inaccessible. And if you want more of this, if you want to explore other South American giants like Purosaurus, the 12-meter crocodilian that dominated the Amazon 8 million years ago, or Forus racos, the 3-meter tall bird of terror, or even more recent megafauna like the giant sloth, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because there is a lot of incredible content coming out specifically focused on our fauna, our paleontology, our scientific discoveries. Giganotosaurus may have disappeared 93 million years ago, but its story lives on through science and through channels like this that are dedicated to bringing this knowledge to you. Thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious, keep asking questions, and never stop being amazed by how absurd and wonderful life on Earth has always been.